All right. Well, hello everyone. And today I have the very special pleasure of getting to chat for a little bit with best-selling author Larry Correia. How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so let me see here. I was trying to count up like all the different series that you've done, and I got let's see here. I've got Monster Hunter International, Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, The Grimoire Chronicles, Academy of Outcasts, Lost Planet Homicide. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. So what am I forgetting here as far as your
I
series?
did Servants of War with Steve Diamond. We did one book of that. We're working on book two. I did the Dead Six series with Mike Coopery, a three-book trilogy of thrillers. And I've got the novel Gunrunner with John Brown, but that's tied into my Lost Planet Homicide universe. I wrote some nonfiction too, in defense of the Second Amendment, and I'm probably free. Oh, and I wrote a couple books for Privateer Press years ago for the War Machine game. So I've written a lot of stuff.
I was gonna say, like, do you think you can pick it up a bit? You're giving like authors a bad name for writing slow, you know? Like,
I
what is
know.
this?
I am. I could pick it up. I've averaged about 2 books a year for the last 15 years. I could probably do better if I put my mind to it.
And I don't know, like even before I knew about like Larry Correia as a personality and all this stuff, like the Monster Hunter books are just like in my Barnes and Noble are just everywhere. Like I don't how many are in that series so far? It's been pretty
There
successful.
are there's 8 so far in the main series. 9 and 10 I have planned for 2026 if all goes according to plan. And there are 3 spin-off novels, 2 anthologies with a third anthology coming, and I'm sorry, 4 spin-off novels, 2 anthologies, a third anthology on the way. An anthology, one of those anthologies was originally in Czech, and we translated it into English
Oh,
because it's a big deal over, and the Czechs love it, so they did an anthology, and then yeah, so it's up to like 13, 14 different things now with 2 more on the way, and then actually 3 more on the way. Never mind, because there's another collaboration, and then 2 more collabs with Jason Cordova.
okay.
So that'll put us at like 17 total, I think, with the spinoffs.
Okay, so
It's done pretty well.
yeah. So like I'm always fascinated by because like obviously fantasy has a reputation for like the long endless series and like can Robert Jordan land the plane already? So like as an author who's like written some like very large series, not just Monster Hunter International, but also like Saga of the Forgotten Warrior is not a short series. Those are
Yeah,
big
6
books
of
and there's
those, and it's
yeah.
wrapped up now, which is pretty cool.
So like how do you keep a series going without like losing steam or just repeating yourself?
Oh,
Like what's been your key for that?
the most important thing is like when I list off all that big list of different books, they're across different genres and styles. So the biggest thing for me is I don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. I will go write a few different things and then come back to a series. The downside of that is it really upsets the people who only like that one series, and they get super butthurt and yell at me all the time, like, "Why aren't you working on this one?" I was like, "Well, the reason I do it, and that's is it keeps it fresh. Because so if I write a book in a series and I step away and I do another book or two, and then I come back, by the time I come back, I'm fresh again, and I'm excited
Hmm.
to be back in that universe. I've known way too many guys over the years, way too many authors that they'll start doing a big long series and they just do that. That's all they do, and they'll just do book after book after book after book. And then you'll notice usually they'll get into that series, depending on the author, but they'll get in the book 4 or 5 books or 6 books, whatever, and they get stale.
Hmm.
You ever notice that? You'll be like reading a
Hmm.
long fantasy series and you get to like book 6 and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And we've seen it. It's happened 100 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I bounce around. And so by the time I come back to
Okay.
Monster Hunter, I'm excited. By the time I go back to Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, I'm excited. Um, and so I have multiple series going live at the same time. But I try to wrap some up too. So Saga of the Forgotten Warrior is completed. Dead Six is completed. Grim Noir Chronicles is completed. So that's 2 trilogies in a 6-book series. So I do try to finish them also and not just leave you hanging. Oh,
Yeah.
and
Well,
Monster Hunter is actually well, it's not ending. So the Monster Hunter universe has a lot more stuff I can do in it. But the actual main series, the main arc that started at book
hmm,
one, there's 2 books left of that arc, and then that arc
okay.
is done, and that main character's story is over.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Well, yeah, like I said, there's sort of a reputation for the un and will book three ever come out of whatever. So
Yeah.
as a fantasy fan, like we appreciate authors who are able to complete it all, and also like that builds trust of like, hey, I'm willing to take a risk on this series that's still left open because like, hey, he landed the plane 3 other times, so.
Yeah, so I've not really let anybody down yet. I haven't turned in a dog yet, which is pretty good. For as long as my career's been going and as many books as I've written, I've not really flubbed a book yet, so that's good. Actually, like all my books have turned out really well, but I think the main thing is because I'm a multi-genre kind of guy.
Sure.
I never get bored. Because you think about it, you work on a book for 6 months. I mean, you sit in a chair for 6 months typing. And so by the time you get done with it, you're just like, oh, kill me now. Oh my gosh. I want to do something else with my life. And so I do. I don't just keep doing the same thing. And that's kept it fun. And if I'm not having fun, then what's the point? I had a real job before this.
Right. So, like if I have to get up every day and go to a job, like why would I let my writing be work that I don't like too? So,
yeah, I mean, it's work, but it's fun work. And so as long as I'm having, and plus too, I think, and I've talked about this a lot on different like creative writing things. I think the biggest key to success as an author is enthusiasm and contagious enthusiasm. And when I say contagious enthusiasm, I mean, if I'm having fun writing, I know the reader's going to have fun reading it because they kind of catch the enthusiasm. When you're like blazing away and you get in like the zone and you just have like this super awesome scene just work out. I know when my brain gets into that area of just like pure creativity and everything's clicking, I know every time when the reader reads that, they're going to be just sucked in and love it. It just, and so if I'm having fun, they have fun.
Yeah.
And I've seen it too, where some writers you can tell, especially as I've been doing this for so long and I've done so much editing, when I read other writers, I can tell when the writer got bored or the writer was struggling. You know what I mean? And it's like, those are the scenes that it's like, yeah, dude, you needed to just, you needed to call it a day here. Take a break and come back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. So, and I don't know if you would say this is a fair reputation or not, but at least there's, your books have a reputation out there for being rather like blue collar, masculine type fantasy novels. And the funny thing is, a lot of the guys that I interact with like daily, first of all, like most of them don't read, but the ones who do, who are like more of the blue collar type, like they're reading Tom Clancy or Lee Child or like Jack Carr. Like they're not reading, I don't know, Terry Brooks or Robert Jordan, or anything like that. So like, what for you has been one of the things that you've looked for in reaching that type of audience, but with a genre that maybe like the Lee Child fans, the Tom Clancy fans aren't going to be like, oh, monsters, sure, I'll read this too.
Yeah, I think, and that wasn't really a conscious decision so much as that's just what I am. That's my background. I come from I grew up on a dairy farm, and I've been a country boy most of my life. And and then I had a white collar job. I went to college and became an accountant and so on and so forth. But that's my roots, and I live out in the sticks now because that's what I prefer. And I have cows again.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and so it wasn't really a conscious decision as much as just that's me. And it's worked out really well because I kind of speak that language and I kind of have that attitude. So my fundamental philosophy as a novelist, which no matter what, as a writer, bits of your personality and your philosophy are going to come into your work. It's just how you are. And so I guess you could just call it the flavor. And that's my background. And so that's kind of my style. And so it comes to me naturally. And one of the things that's worked for me too is I get bored with very languid fantasy. And when I say that, I mean like really long swaths where nothing happens, scenes where people just eat dinner and talk about like who's wearing what colored dress. I hate that stuff. I love reading fantasy my whole life, but I hated those scenes. Like, so any scene that I would be tempted to skim, I don't write, And so my writing style is actually faster paced than most fantasy authors. That's just my personality, I guess. And as far as reaching that audience of guys that mostly read, Clancy and Brad Thor and Vince Flynn and Reacher and that kind of thing, it's kind of a natural jump over. So even though they might not normally be a guy that reads about like dragons and monsters and wizards, they read Larry Correia novels.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that's worked out really well for me. And it's funny because there's been this whole big thing on the internet, this meme for basically the last year of why don't men read books anymore. You've probably seen that. It's been all over and all these news articles about it. And it's kind of a multifaceted question, and it's partly BS because in reality, men do still read. Men do still read a lot. It's just that a lot of the stuff that's served up by the regular Manhattan publishing industry is not aimed at them. So they don't buy that, but men buy books still a lot, and a lot of it's indie now because those markets are catering to dudes, whereas like most of the stuff on the shelf at Barnes & Noble is not. And don't get me wrong, I've sold a lot of books at Barnes & Noble. I'm just saying, but Barnes & Noble doesn't cater to my demographic.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know what you describe. My demographic is guys that know how to weld. You know?
Yeah, sure. That's not a bad way to
whatever.
say it.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah. Well, like
or something of that nature.
Yeah, like I mean, by professional, like I'm a ditch digger. Like at least that's what I do to pay the bills right now. So it's like, I get that.
I drive a track hoe. Yeah, that guy will like Larry Correia novels.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just it's kind of worked out really well for me because I've kind of been an outlier in fantasy, and you know, I've enjoyed it, and it's worked out really well. And plus, I've got this really super loyal fan base that talks to their friends, and that's the other thing I've had going for me is because I've never really had a big marketing budget in my entire career, not once. But I have a really super loyal fan base because they like my stuff and they know that I am one of them and on their side. And they're like, "Hey, this guy gets it, and he gets our fundamental philosophy." And you know, I'm just a gun-toting, you know, action-loving kind of guy, and I think that comes through in the books, and people enjoy it. And it's also because of that. The downside of that too is so I started out doing this, and so all the critics and academics and snooty types just automatically assumed I was dumb. And it's like, oh, he writes knuckle dragon monster blah, you know, blah blah blah, and they just act like you're stupid. And it wasn't, and I'm not. I'm actually, you know, there's a lot of depth to what I write. Yes, it is monsters and explosions, but it doesn't have to be stupid.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I wrote Saga the Forgotten Warrior, which is my epic fantasy series, that I finally in my career got to where people were forced to recognize, like, oh, hey, well, crap, this guy can actually write good.
That's fascinating.
So all the like snooty critic, literati, academic types finally were like, oh, wow, I guess this guy doesn't suck.
Well, because with Son of the Black Sword, like there's, you know, it's like, yeah, like, is there monsters? Yes. Is it very sword and sorcery? It's like, yes, it is. But it's, if I do say so to the author, like it's really well thought out. Like there's a lot of interesting questions that are built just into the world building that I think that you need to wrestle with.
There's like super violent action and awesomeness and like almost like wushu level battle scenes with crazy magic and monsters, and it's super badass and like basically fantasy Judge Dredd, but at the same time it's wrestling with all these big questions. Like what is the nature of man, and it's like society, and but the thing is I don't ever beat anybody over the head with it. So it's not like there's like message. No, that stuff's all in the background, you know. It's just regular people living their lives, going through the adventure, and but like there's a lot of depth to that, you know. And cause I got like a whole, you know, the caste systems, and there's a genocide going on, and you know, and all this questions about law versus morality. But at the same time, it's like, boom, let's have a sword fight.
Yeah.
You know. And so at no time does the reader feel like, oh, this guy's preaching to me about his philosophy or whatever, you know, because I hate that. And so I just like to just have fun with it. And like, I'll get an idea of a story I want to tell. And I think, how do I want to tell this in a way that's really entertaining? And then after that is any of the themes and like, you know, that stuff comes later. The main thing is just, I want the reader to have fun and to come away just having enjoyed it.
So with all of your like works being like distinctly like Larry Correia novels, you've also, you know, we've talked about this a little bit already, but like you've written across a lot of different like types of books too. You have trilogies, you have big long series, you have like short story collections, and you have like a lot of novellas that you've written. So like how much does the format of the book or the like the length of the book or the length of the story that you're telling, how much do you have to like bear that in mind, and does that change how you write, or is it basically like, no, I just sit down and it comes out how it comes out.
No, it definitely matters because the main thing is like so I don't really write anything unless I have a deal now. Like everything I write is for a purpose. Like I'm selling it to someone. I'm kind of past that point in my career where I would just sit down and like write and then hope to sell it later. I've got too many things that people want, and so what I do is like I have the mission going in. So if it's a 20,000 word novella or 30,000 word novella, when I'm thinking about it and brainstorming, I was like, how much story can I tell in that much space realistically? And that determines what I'm going to outline and what I'm going to do. And like if I'm writing a short story or a novella, I don't outline at all. I just really kind of go. And if I'm writing a novel, I outline it and I know approximately how big the novel is going to be from the get-go. Though I've been wrong a couple times in my career, and I had a book that I thought would be one book and actually turned into two books. I've had that twice in my career, where on the outline I thought it was a one-book story, and no, it was not. And but then you just adjust and you just finish it at a good spot, and then you write another book. And so that does play a part. I think it's just kind of like mission oriented. You just kind of like, this is the parameters of the job, and I'm going to go in, I'm going to do that job.
Now, you've talked about like you have a loyal fan base that's like followed you across. So like I know there's a lot of fantasy authors out there, and I'm friends with some of them who have like they wrote one series and it got big, and like nothing just seemed to like stick to the wall after that. And you don't seem to have that problem. And is it just the fact that it's consistent quality, or what do you think it is that makes an author like one hit wonder versus somebody like yourself? Like we could say point to somebody like Brandon Sanderson, where it's like, everything that they write turns to gold. What do you think is the difference between one and the other?
That's really interesting, actually, and the fact you bring up Brandon is actually directly related to my business decision going in and how it's worked out for me. So to tell the story is when I was first starting out, I had the deal for Monster Hunter. I'd already self-published it, and now I had a deal for Baen Books to do the real trade published version. And I was at a convention with Brandon Sanderson. He was new too. He was about 4 years ahead of me, maybe 4 or 5 years ahead of me in his career. And he was talking about. Well, actually, they had just announced that he had the Wheel of Time. All right, that's where he was at. So they just barely that got announced like right before this convention. So we're there, and he actually takes me out to dinner because he wanted to give me business advice of stuff that he wished he knew when he was starting out. And one of the things he told me that stuck with me was he had written Elantris, was his first book, and it was a pretty good size hit. Like people really liked Elantris, and there was all this demand: give us more Elantris, give us more Elantris. And instead, he decided to take a gamble on himself, and he wrote Mistborn. And so he wrote something different and entirely different. And it was even a bigger hit. It was actually a very good book, and people really liked it. And so all of a sudden, he went from being just the Elantris guy to a fantasy author that could do multi-talented different things. And so that kind of established his career that he's not a one-trick pony, right out the gate. And so I wrote Monster Hunter, and I had the same thing going on, and I had a lot of demand, give us more Monster Hunter, give us more Monster Hunter. And I had actually written a sequel already, so I had to. But I pitched to my editor, Tony Weisskopf at Baen. I said, I would like to do something else, because I don't want to be just the monster guy, just like Brandon didn't want to be just the Elantris guy. Mm-hmm. So I pitched a couple different projects, one of those was Hard Magic, and the other one was Dead Six, which was a thriller with Mike Coopery. And I wound up doing those, and they actually both did pretty well. Dead Six not as well as Hard Magic. Hard Magic actually did extremely well, that trilogy. And all of a sudden, so I had this 1930s alternate history, weird magic adventure pulp series and Monster Hunter. And then shortly after, I had a kind of a thriller series. And so I had all these boom, 3 different genres right out the gate, really early in my career. And all 3 were good. And in fact, I had people arguing which one was the best, which is that's ideal because you hate it.
Right.
If you're an author and you've written 30 books and 90% of the people say the same book as your best book, that's actually bad.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because that means you haven't really grown over time. And so right off the gate, I was in 3 different things, and it worked, and people really liked all 3. And so from that point on, I had gained their trust. And so what happens with a lot of authors is they will write the one thing, and the one thing will do good, and they'll do more and more of the one thing, but they don't really branch into anything else, or they do branch into something else, but that other thing just flops. And it might be that it wasn't as good as the first thing, or it could be that it just didn't grab their audience, or for whatever reason, marketing wise or whatever, their audience didn't trust them. And sometimes it's not fair. Like, for example, Jim Butcher does the Dresden Files, and then he did Codex Alara, and then he did the Cinder Spires. Dresden Files is the mega hit, right? But I actually like Cinder Spires the best. I think Cinder Spires is brilliant. I think Cinder Spires is fantastic. But Cinder Spires never caught on. It's not a giant hit like Jim's other stuff. And I don't know how Codex Alara did. I'm not sure on that. But, and so for Jim's perspective, to me, that's a bummer, because I would love to see more Cinder Spires. I just think it's a great series. And, but you never know. It's every book we throw out there to the world is kind of a crapshoot on whether people are going to like it or not.
Yeah.
But once they trust you, then you got a lot more leeway to play. And once you've proved that you can go multi-genre, then you get a core group of people that will follow you to anything, it's awesome. And then it's fantastic. And it's great, because then it gives me some freedom to experiment. And all of a sudden I can write like a sci-fi police procedural like Lost Planet Homicide, and people will still get it. Or I can write a comedy series. Oh, I forgot. When we listed Tom Stranger, I have a comedy series. People love Tom Stranger, so I'll do different weird crap, and people will follow me over. But it's just kind of fun.
Now you can tell me like if I'm reading too much into this, but like obviously like there's Monster Hunter International, but like there's a lot of like monster killing in the Saga of the Forgotten Warrior books, and like we're also here today, like we're talking about Larry Correia, but we're also here to talk about like American Paladin as well, which has presumably monster killing in it. So like, am I reading too much into this? Do you think like what is it about specifically the idea of like humans and like men facing up against monsters that's been like such a through line with some of your major series that you've worked on?
I just love monsters, honestly, and there's not really like any sort of like profound man versus monster or anything like that. It's I just always loved them, and I've always been like a horror movie fan. And so when I started doing Monster Hunter, it was really the idea behind it was what would happen if Gunnuts ran into horror movie situations. It was really how the whole series came about, and so I always loved monsters. I always loved monster flicks, and so the Monster Hunter International series was like the homage to B movies kind of monsters. And then when I did Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, it's an epic fantasy. In epic fantasy, you just need creatures.
Yeah.
And there's not really that many creatures in Saga, but you'll see why as you read the books. But there's a few specific ones that are just kind of awesome. And I had fun because I needed alien antagonists, basically. In Grim Noir, I actually had some extra dimensional forces involved. So there were some creatures in that, and hard magic. And then Lost Planet Homicide, obviously sci-fi. I have an alien, which is pretty cool. It's actually based on a basket starfish. If you've ever seen one of those, they're absolutely. If you look at basket starfish, you'll see why the alien from this story is so terrifying. And then like so in American Paladin, the monsters are more coming from like the mythology of the Western United States for the most part. Down to borrowing heavily from Mexico. And so that is just kind of the angle I went on that one.
Sure.
And that's kind of like a multi-dimensional kind of thing where there's our world and there's another world kind of like bumping up to ours occasionally with stuff crossing back and forth. And being able to do that in a vigilante story is a lot of fun, having and so I have monsters in a lot of my stuff. Oh, and then Academy of the Outcast is basically just kind of like Dungeons and Dragons kind of fantasy, So there's like 10 million fantasy races and creatures and every traditional thing you could think of, and just kind of all rolled in there as one. Because I wanted to do a series like that. So I did Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, which is like the super serious, dark, epic fantasy. Then I did Academy of Outcasts, which is just kind of like my D&D session
Mm-hmm.
fantasy of just like fun and crazy, get the treasure, blow crap up, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, definitely, I love creating weird creatures. Every time I go to a convention and they have a panel on like monsters, I wind up on that one.
So, like, and I'm sure you're going to be asked this 100 times, and I'm sure you've already been asked this a lot, but like, because, and we'll just transition over to talking about American Paladin and the work that you're doing with Arc Press with all of that. So with how successful like Monster Hunter International has been, how have you been working on like differentiating American Paladin, which like on a surface level, if you're just looking at a one sentence description, might sound similar. So like, how have you worked to try to make it distinct and its own thing and separate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so behind the scenes, Arc Press came to me. They're a new publisher, and I wanted to work with them. And they wanted to work with me because there's a bunch of my old editors from other publishing houses are at this place, and so I've worked with 3 guys that work there, and so they're like, we want Larry, and they really wanted an urban fantasy because they wanted me to be like one of their tentpole first launch authors.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm best known, so I'm multi-genre, but urban fantasy is the one that I'm the most successful at commercially. And so they wanted urban fantasy. So my question to myself was, okay, I've already got Monster Hunter, and I want to do another urban fantasy series, but I need to like be distinct from that. And so what am I going to do different? So the things I did different. So Monster Hunter is kind of it's a team effort because it's a company, and so it's a group of people and they're professionals.
Mm-hmm.
This is more. I went with the like lone vigilante genre. And so it's things like, have you ever read Repairman Jack by F. Paul Wilson?
No, I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read it.
Fantastic book. And so Repairman Jack's a guy in New York City who solves problems for people, takes care of bad guys, that kind of the stuff, the problems the law won't handle, but also there's a supernatural element. Sure. So it's kind of like that, except I went, American West. But also, books like Reacher, and I'm not a huge Reacher fan, but I actually like the TV show more than the books. But like, you got one guy and he's a tough guy and he goes out there and he takes care of the problems the law won't or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted to do a vigilante story. So one of the differences is, so instead of being like a big organized team, it's just one dude. Plus Monster Hunter has resources. They have like tons of money and been doing this for 100-something years. Whereas this guy is just one dude. Yeah. And he hit whatever money he has. Actually, I keep the amount of money everything he has is basically stolen from drug dealers as this goes on. And so he's actually kind of a vigilante on a budget, and every time he has to throw away a gun after a crime, he feels bad about it. So not a lot of resources. Plus, he doesn't have superpowers.
Sure.
Many of not all the characters, but many of the characters in Monster Hunter are special for some reason. Mm-hmm. There's like a cosmic reason that character's a big deal. It's kind of like they're all like the chosen ones for the final battle for humanity, right? Mm-hmm. No, my dude's a high school dropout, cowboy kid. There's nothing. He doesn't have any magical powers. He doesn't have any unique, especially he's not chosen or anything. He's just a dude he's a survivor and he's really tough and he's smart. Yeah. And so right there, it's like from the get-go, it's like basically the characters and their abilities and their resources are totally different. Monster Hunter International, it's like all the monsters you could think of. American Paladin, I'm going more, like I said, Western mythology kind of thing. I don't want to give too much away, but I have said this is like a proto-Aztec empire that still exists on the other side of the veil. You know what I mean? So it's like, imagine the Aztecs, but 500 years later. And just as horrible, but more advanced, and but like crossing over occasionally. So also too, it's a lot more shooting of regular bad people too, because like I said, it's a vigilante as opposed to like big monsters. So not as much. So Monster Hunter International, a lot of like big world-ending, Cthulhu level threats, whereas American Paladin is like a dude with a couple guns and no friends versus like an Aztec kill team.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it is different on that level, but honestly too, like vibe wise, both of them, and this is, I think, more my personality shining through of like what I like to read. Both of them, I wanted to go with a character who's just, I like heroic characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though they get put like different rough situations and make bad decisions, ultimately I like writing about heroes. I'm not a grim, nihilistic kind of guy. I think the grimmest, most nihilistic I'll go on a character is like Ashok Vidal from Saga of the Forgotten Warrior.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I like guys that try to do the right thing, regardless of the cost. I like so on both of these, I'm going with a guy who's trying to do something heroic.
Mm-hmm.
Though in American Paladin, the guy is doing something heroic, but it's also extremely illegal, and he commits like 200 felonies over the course of this book. I mean, it's so I'll say this: it's the right thing according to his perspective.
Well, that's one of the interesting things that when I first heard about, I was like, okay, where he's got a new series coming out, and the name American Paladin stuck out to me because like as a fantasy reader, that like a paladin is like a knight that's renowned for chivalry and for heroism and for like a certain set of code. But then like when you pair that with like American and like you talk about sort of the individualist, the gun toter, that type of the cowboy. It's like, okay, the combination of those two, like that, even just the title tells you something about the ideas that the book is playing with that I'm interested to see how you play with that in the
that was okay. So behind the scenes, here's behind the scenes, just so you guys know, I suck at titles. I'm bad at titles. I'm like the worst. Like most of my books, I have struggled with the title, and it wasn't until I talked with the editors that I came up with what the final title is. Just I'm bad at it, and I really am. Now, with American Paladin, so at the time I was writing the book and I had the outline completed and I was working on the book. I was like 30,000 words in and I still didn't have the title finalized in my head. I had like 8 different ones. And it was actually talking to, but the whole Paladin thing was already part of the book. Because actually, in World, that winds up being kind of like the code name that's given to the vigilante. And it's like, but the people actually don't know where it's from, and there's several different things it could be. There's the whole thing with Charlemagne's Knights. There's the like modern D&D fantasy angle, and then there's like the old "Have Gun Will Travel," right? Yeah. And that actually is where the name comes from. It comes from the guy's grandpa, who was a big fan of that. And I was talking about that, but it was always a very distinctly American thing already. Mm-hmm. And it was actually one of the editors at ARC was a guy named David F. Sherratt, and David's a great guy. And we were talking back and forth and bouncing ideas back and forth. And he goes, "What about American Paladin?" And I thought about it. I was like, "Oh, damn, that is super descriptive. Oh my gosh, that really paints a picture." And I was like, let me sleep on that. And then the next morning, I went back to it is Tony Daniels, the head editor, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I think David nailed it. I think that is a good title." Like that title that title slaps, man.
So I'm needless to say, when I heard about this project, and the more I've heard about it, the more it's been like, well, this is one of my like most anticipated books of 2026. And since as of the time of this being recorded, and then when we release it, it'll still be ongoing. There's special actually opportunity for people who are interested in the book that we should probably talk about, which is there's a Kickstarter running. So I don't know if you have thoughts just by way of introduction about it, but
yeah. So on this one, we decided to do something a little bit different. So ARC is a new press, and but it's populated by some very experienced guys. Like I said, all these editors are people I've worked with before. Tony Daniels, the head editor, and brilliant guy, very, very smart. And he was my editor at Regnery, which is a nonfiction press. Before that, he worked for Baen Books. Before that, he worked for Simon & Schuster. So Tony really knows the business. And he wanted to do something kind of unique and fun. And as we've seen over recent years, once again, referring to Brandon Sanderson being a pioneer, Kickstarter is a great way, not just to like release a book and get pre-orders, but to build like excitement and enthusiasm and marketing buzz. And so we said, okay, we're going to do a Kickstarter to launch it. Well, we still have a regular distribution deal. We'll still be on Amazon. We'll still be distributed into bookstores. And so that's all normal, but that's going to come about a month later after everybody on the Kickstarter gets their books. But the thing about the Kickstarter is it gives people kind of like this buy-in where like if you've done a lot of Kickstarters, like I have, because I love miniatures. I'm a mini painter. And so I have painted thousands of minis, and so I've participated in so many Kickstarters. And there's this thing for you get into the Kickstarter, and then you like feel this ownership of the Kickstarter, and you can see every day how many people are involved and how much money they've raised, and how big it's getting. And then there's the stretch goals where you're throwing cool stuff on, and it just causes this like way more enthusiasm than you would get with just like my book releases on this day in stores now. You know what I mean? Right. And so we launched on day one. It was bonkers. So we funded the project in 45 seconds, and so we had a fairly low amount of money for the fund. It was just $5,000, which is not really anything big, but you have to put an amount that you want to fund that's achievable. But it's also kind of like your minimum cutoff to make the project economically viable. It's like. And we're going to do the regular books anyway for stores and whatnot, but for like the special stuff for the Kickstarter, we needed to do this. And in advance, we were like planning, and Tony Daniel was like, I want to have a graphic ready that said funded in X hours, and we could plug in how many hours. And Dave Butler, who's one of the other editors, goes, no, we need to be funded in X minutes. Well, little did they realize, and so, we were on a live stream, and I was just talking, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, and we funded. And it was, we thought it was in 2 minutes, but it was actually Kickstarter stats said 45 seconds. It just did it took that long for our counters on our screens to go up. And then it just blew up. And so I think right now we're at, at the time of us recording this, we're right around $200,000, which for a book is pretty dang cool.
That's not too bad.
That's not too bad, and we're just a couple days into it, and I don't want to get into it obviously because this is a podcast. I don't want to bum people out, but on the second day of the Kickstarter, we had some pretty terrible current events occur in the country, and a lot of people were really heartbroken about that and tore up. So obviously, life happens and things happen, but you move on, and you got to do what you got to do, and people are counting on you. So you just continue working, and So, but that that messed stuff up for a while, but is what it is. And back in the saddle, and you just continue on. So, we're running it for a month, and so where we'll get to, I have no idea. But we've got stretch goals planned. As a joke, they threw out a stretch goal of if we hit $20 million, we'll make an anime.
There you go. That's not bad.
Which is funny, in the extremely unlikely chances that happens, I actually know people we can call. We're good. But that's not going to happen. But we'll see where it turns up. It's actually pretty fun because we're over 2,000, 2,200 people right now. Which, if you know much about book marketing, to have 2,200 pre-orders on a limited edition hardcover is pretty cool. Just in a couple days. And so where we'll get with this, I don't know. It's been a fun experiment. I've seen a lot of authors have done this. Obviously, Brandon was the big freakish outlier. So authors, don't compare yourself to Brandon Sanderson. You're just going to feel bad. I mean, it's like, I don't play basketball as good as Michael Jordan. Good for you. I mean, you're still good. But we're looking at it, and there's a lot of authors who funded individual books, like authors who aren't as famous who've done, $30,000, $40,000 Kickstarters for a book. But if you think about it as an author, that's basically you're paying yourself a pretty hefty, significant advance. And so we're seeing quite a few authors at that level. There's also a lot of authors who've used Kickstarter, but it hasn't clicked for them. You see a lot of failed book Kickstarters, and I don't really know why. I don't know if they don't have the fan engagement. The biggest challenge to the Kickstarter is reaching people. And so it's being smart about how you advertise. And also, for me, it's been overcoming social media throttling. Because it's funny, I have huge social media followings, right? Not huge, but pretty good size compared to most authors on Facebook and Twitter. And I try to reach them about book stuff, and it's nothing. The algorithm gives it no traffic. if there's any words in there that sound like I'm trying to sell something.
Hmm.
But I can go rant about politics, and they'll show it to 100,000 people. No problem.
Sure.
You know, I could just go off on some political topic, and 100,000 people will see it. No problem. Next post, I'll be like, "Hey, Kickstarter starts Tuesday." 4 people see it.
Sure.
And so there are some challenges to it. And then beyond me, I've seen a lot of Kickstarters that hit like the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 range for books, which actually for the audience who isn't aware how big the book business is, that's huge. Especially if that's just your pre-order before you get. I mean, that's gigantic. And then I think to get into the top 10, I think the bottom of the top 10 of authors on Kickstarter are like the $600,000, $700,000 range. So where we'll get, I don't know, but we are having a lot of fun with it, and we'll still be doing a normal release afterwards. But the Kickstarter has been, it's been fun. It's been really cool seeing people jump in on that and kind of having fun with it.
Well, speaking of things that are rather fun, what is the phrase that you guys have been using for the special way that you're signing the books?
Oh, kinetic alteration.
Yes.
Okay, so we have because that's another thing now in writing is you have like really fancy hardcovers, right?
Yeah.
Like beautiful limited edition hardcovers that will look beautiful on your shelf at home, that kind of thing. And so if you have an author with a sufficient following, then those are great. It's a great additional income source for an author. But what we decided to do for the Kickstarter ones to make them special was I am going to kinetically alter all of the title pages before they bind them in the book. And so, I don't know how YouTube will feel about this, not being GunTube, but I will kinetically alter each individual, and we're keeping the brass for each page.
Discharge.
Yeah, so I basically they're sending me a giant thing of title pages, and then I'm bundling it back up with the brass I used to shoot them. And the thing is, I agreed to this going in because I didn't know how many people were going to buy the fancy big hardcover.
Sure.
And last I looked, I'm gonna need a case of ammo. And I'm like, how in the heck am I gonna do all this? Because I have to put each page.
Right.
And I might just have to do a video and talk directly to the fans where I might have to like put 10 in a row and then do like a 10-shot group. And because I'm like looking at these individually and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take me days to set.
You put it on some sort of like spinning laundry rack, where it's like
I know I'd have to if I get a clothesline and just clothespin them and just run them in front of me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. I mean, because I love shoot. I love that, and this is my hobby. It's what I do for fun, and doing that though is like, wow. I have invited some logistical challenges upon myself here in the marketing of this book. But that's marketing. And book marketing is a heck of a thing. Like however you differentiate yourself from the herd, I have no idea. There's so many ways to do it. And every genre is different. Like obviously, if I was writing romance, I wouldn't be, shooting 1,000, title pages. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But I was looking at some of the Kickstarters. Actually, some of the biggest Kickstarters are in romance. Apparently, the romance genre kills on there.
Like I've been checking it more just to see how the American Paladin has been going, and then it's recommending me other book ones, and all of it and whatever people can read but it's a vampire romance and another romantasy book, and I'm like, my algorithm is not catering to this, but apparently it's big enough that it's
so huge.
It's
authors I've never heard of. I'm a fantasy and sci-fi thriller guy, right?
Yeah,
I know that world pretty good. I don't know the romantasy world at all, but it's like some author I've never heard of, has her $300,000 Kickstarter, $400,000 Kickstarter. It's like, I have no idea who you are, man, but congratulations. I mean, good for you. But romance is huge. That's a huge market.
Went into the wrong subgenre, Larry.
I went into the wrong genre.
Yeah. Now, so the if I'm remembering correctly, American Paladin comes out early-ish next year.
I want to say May.
Okay.
May I think, or for the Kickstarter books, and then an April release or June, something like that, or
Okay.
Yeah, April, May.
But there is, if I'm
Yeah.
remembering properly, there's something special that's coming before the end of this year, which is
Oh
you've got
gosh,
a graphic novel coming with
I
the
do. Yeah.
novel as
So
well.
we did in conjunction with the American Paladin. It's not just a novel. We did a graphic novel. The artist is Alex Wisner, and Alex is brilliant. Like his art
Hmm.
style is really really cool. And you guys have just seen teasers so far.
Mhm.
But so I have never done a graphic novel script before. And so I wrote the script. I sent it to Alex. We worked back and forth, mostly because I really wasn't sure how to pace stuff visually.
Hmm.
Because you have a lot of panels where there's no dialogue or anything. It's just and I normally in a book I know how long it takes me to describe something.
Sure.
Alex draws it. It's totally different.
Right, right.
Um, and so we had to go back and forth, and he was just awesome to work with, like great guy, and has some really good ideas. And so the story is Dust Sacrifice is the graphic novel, and it's not the same story. It's the same character, but it's set after the book. So it takes place after the book. Same character, same universe, and so it's kind of like a happy addition to this
Hmm.
Kickstarter. And I tell you, man, having never done a graphic novel before, I was really nervous, but it came out like really, really good.
Hmm.
And in fact, like I don't know if you know Mike Barron is. If you're into comic books, Mike Barron thought it was awesome.
Okay.
And Mike Barron is the guy, as far as writing vigilantes, Mike Barron is probably the guy who wrote more of the Punisher than
Hmm.
anybody else ever. Like the classic Punisher author,
Sure, sure.
and he plugged it. He thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I'm thankful that Dave Butler actually sent me an arc of it, so
Oh, did you get it? Oh, you got an
I've
arc.
gotten a chance to read it, which
Oh,
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really really badass and to make me excited for like the rest of the book. It's like, oh
I
man,
know.
I want
Okay,
more
we
of
can't
this.
give away too much for the audience, obviously, but my favorite page, the artist is so cool, right? So I write the script, but like it's up to him how he shows this.
Yeah.
Well, there's a scene where they're fighting a monster with
Hmm.
it's got its weapon, and it's like this giant like Aztec war club. So it's this big
Yeah.
war club with like obsidian spikes, and he's got the panel where it's coming across at like this ankle on the panel,
Hmm.
and then one panel below is the American's weapon, which I can't say what it is, but it's at the exact same angle as they're like coming at each other, but I can't say what we're using. And that shot is so awesome. And plus, the monster's hideous. It's disgusting. That was one of those. So I put like a brief description of what I kind of had, but I turned it loose to Alex because I was like, "Hey, man, you're the artist. You're the guy with the visual acuity here. Um, I just have this parameter. Just go nuts."
Yeah.
And he made something that's just way grosser than I would have came up with. It was like just disgusting. It's a disgusting looking thing, and I won't say too much, but it's just nasty. It's just gross. And I was like, I saw it. I was like, it's not something I would have thought of, and I was like, that's gross.
Yeah.
And I would run. As they do, I would run from this thing,
Right, right.
because this looks horrible. And it just came out really badass. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, no, I did. I very much enjoyed it. Do you know if there's plans or thoughts about doing more of them or?
As it stands right now, we're going to do the Kickstarter first and see how it shakes out on that. I would love to.
Yeah.
On that one too, it's like I don't know because that's a team effort, obviously. Because Alex
Sure.
is like the guy, and it takes him a lot longer to draw all this stuff than it. For me, writing a script it's basically like writing a short story as
Sure.
far as like word count and size. So that only takes me a week, like maybe 4 or 5 days of work of thinking and writing. Alex then has to draw 80 pages
Right.
of stuff. But yeah, I would like to because I think the people are really going to like it because I just it looks badass
Yeah.
and it's just kind of really a lot of. I got another graphic novel I'm doing with Hound Dog Media is doing a Gunrunner adaptation. But that's an adaptation of one of my novels, and so that's a
Okay.
entirely different process. It has its own writer. I'm not, you know, that's more they're
Sure.
just taking my book and doing their thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is my first graphic novel, foray into that universe, and it's pretty cool actually.
When you mentioned earlier, like having worked collaboratively with Steve Diamond and Jason Cordova, I believe are the two that we mentioned. So how similar was it, like collaborating with other authors in like written form versus like collaborating with an artist for a graphic novel?
Really different. On the writing, the way I collaborate with most of my other collaborations with writers is we'll do the original brainstorming process, and then I'll write the outline, and then we kick it back and forth until we're happy with it, and then they'll do the rough draft, and then I'll come back and I'll do my draft, and they'll do their draft, and we'll go back and forth. I've had other authors where like I'd write a chapter, they like Mike Cooper. I'd write a chapter, Mike write a chapter. I'd write a chapter, Mike write a chapter, back and forth. This was really different because it was like script was all me, and so it's just basically if you've ever seen like a movie screenplay, it turns out that basically a comic book script is really similar to a movie screenplay in formatting, in that you have like your shot, exterior shot, interior shot, your establishing shot, but then you have like whatever your thought bubbles are, and it's like, so Mike is the character, says this, and that's his dialogue, dialogue tag on it, and then the other guy says this and does this. And as far as like the descriptions go, I leave it really loose. And there was a lot of stuff because it's set in the West, and there was a lot of stuff that were like really cool images I thought were like iconic images to use. And I would just go on Google and I would find images that like I was like, this is what I'm thinking. I would send it to Alex, and then Alex would actually sketch it and then send me pages of like the rough pencil sketch.
Yeah.
And so he'd have it like blocked out into panels, and he'd take my page of script and he'd put it into those panels of like how it was set up, and I would check it out and see. And then I would send him and so like at one point I was having him use a piece of farm equipment as a weapon, and so that I've driven a lot in real life, and so I sent him pictures of this particular piece of farm equipment.
Yeah.
But like another point we have like where there's oil derricks in the background, so I got some of the cool oil derricks. And at one point somebody gets hung up like a game animal, and so I sent pictures of like what that looks like, and then Alex just kind of like ran with it. Oh, and then a really weird part is because my fans are sticklers on gun stuff,
right?
Like, they just are. I got to get my stuff right. So for the weaponry, I actually modeled where I put on all the correct tack gear and weapons, which is funny because the character looks nothing like me at all, right? Nothing at all like me. And but I modeled with all the guns and the different stances and like doing the different stuff, and sent him the photos of me, and then he used that. Yeah, it's funny because then he like took the guns exactly, and it's like the exact weapons and the exact kit, and which is funny because he did change one thing like artistically, that looked cooler artistically, but it wasn't like tactically correct. So immediately when that image went up on the sample, my fans were like, "Oh, that's not where that goes," and they were like all freaking out, like, "Guys, calm down. It's like you got to give the artist some license here."
Right.
It's like he wanted this thing to look cool, and it's okay. It's like we can. I know that's against like army doctrine, but it's okay. It's okay. Calm down. It was just that's my fans, right? My fans are they're hardcore.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna complain that his knife is in the wrong position, right? that he put the knife in the wrong place, but that's okay. Let Alex be an artist, okay, guys? Relax.
Well, I think, like I said, I think the not being an expert in these things, I can't speak to that, but I will say I enjoyed the graphic novel a lot, and I think other people will too. So if you think of backing the Kickstarter, like grab it as an add-on or one of the packages, because I think people will have a heck of a time.
Yeah, it's totally worth it, honestly. Like even if you're, or I was going to say, if there's anybody out there who's a graphic novel guy who's not into reading novels, you can skip my book and grab his graphic novel. It's like legitly, it's legit. You guys are going to like it. It's pretty cool. I thought. Plus, Alex's art style is really interesting, and because he's not photorealistic. He goes very. I don't want to say it's anime. It's not anime. But it's not a manga style. But it's almost like an American manga style. Like the faces are super expressive faces, and the art's stylized, but it just looks really clean.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not an artist, so I'm not good at describing that. But like, he's a super talented guy.
Yeah.
Super impressed by his talent.
Do you have like thoughts going forward with American Paladin? Do you have hopes of like, all right, I want to do like 4 or 5, or is it just like nope, one and done? What's kind of your thought?
Right now it's here? 2. Right now I have 2, basically 2 in the queue, and so I don't know exact schedule, because at this point in my career, it's always like how many books do I want to commit to in a thing. I have to balance it because I got so many irons in the fire.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I've got 2 planned, and where we'll go from there, it just kind of depends. One nice thing about it being vigilante stories as opposed to like big super world-ending events is the stories are smaller in scope, so I can tell basically one story and it's contained. You know what I mean? And so, there's overarching stuff, and like you learn things about the universe. But as far as the events of that story, it's contained. And so that gives me a little bit more creative freedom. And so, as of right now, it's 2. And I think that's probably the first time I've said that in public.
Breaking news.
But yeah, actually, so I do actually have I have under contract a second book.
Okay.
With ARC for American Paladin. So
yeah,
it should be pretty cool.
I
got some pretty fun stuff planned. There's a lot of cool mythology to play with.
And there's a cool because like a lot of like in terms of famous urban fantasy, like I think of like the main series that I've read is like Dresden, which is like set in Chicago, which is like all fine and good, but like I'm not from Chicago. I also live out in the sticks in like the Midwest, so it is cool to be like to see a certain element from somebody who knows it and to see that represented. And there's obviously any author can write about a setting with enough research, but there's something about knowing what the feel of like the dirt under your fingernails is like, and the smell of the manure of running a dairy farm is like, that just some of those authentic experience things that you're not going to get from somebody who hasn't lived it, which clearly you have. So I'm excited just to see that. If not,
which is funny because not in the first book but there's a scene in the second one where it involves some stuff on horseback. And here's actually an ugly secret. I am a country boy, but I am terrible with horses. And whenever I need horse stuff, luckily I live in a place with a ton of cowboys, and so it's not hard for me to ask friends for like some basic horse advice to keep from screwing up my horse stuff. I had to do the same thing with Saga of the Forgotten Warrior because there's a lot of horseback stuff in that.
Sure.
But yeah, so most of the stuff I'm fairly familiar with, but there's other stuff that I do need to bring in some help because I can't ride a horse to save my life. Once on the dairy, once we got a 4-wheeler, we actually had horses growing up, but my dad like ran a shelter for like deranged horses that no one else wanted.
It's like, here, throw a little kid up on them, have fun.
Yeah, it was like, here, just go ride it. It's like. So my horseback knowledge is very bad because I was taught by somebody who was bad, and we had bad horses.
Hey, that checks out, I suppose.
Oh yeah. So, but no, it's fun to get into the stuff that's like kind of that world. And I stole a few things from my real life experience working on different farms for different people, including like you wind up working with like a lot of really shady people. Because I grew up poor. And so one point in the book, I refer to like when he was younger, he's working on a ranch where everybody else who works there is like a really scruffy white guy with a criminal record or an illegal alien. That's like everybody that works there. And the funny thing is that when I wrote that line, that applied to like 3 different places that I've worked when I was young. I was just the one kid, like the kid that didn't have a criminal record there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, good times.
Well, Larry, as we're looking forward to American Paladin obviously coming out, one sort of like last curveball question that I always like to ask when I chat with authors is what's like it doesn't have to be fantasy or sci-fi, but it can be. But like, what's a novel that you see that you feel like not enough people have read or that is underrated that really means something to you that you can recommend to myself and also our viewers?
Oh man, you caught me unaware on that. Let me think. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go with one that's a little weird because like we were just talking about American Paladin, but I'll give you two. Actually, because they're both related to what we were just talking about. So it's on my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first off, my editor on this is Dave Butler, and or one of my editors is Dave Butler, and Dave Butler is a really good author as well. He's not just an editor, but he was underneath his writer name is DJ Butler. He has a book. It's the first of the Witchy War saga. It's called Witchy Eye. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have it queued up. I haven't read it yet.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I need
Okay.
to.
So
yeah.
It's so distinct and original. So think of an epic fantasy, but set in like late 1700s or early 1800s North America. So kind of like early colonial America, but it's not because it's a fantasy world. But it's it's like William Penn is emperor. Okay. And it's crazy, and it's really a weird setting. Like it's a weird setting, but it's interesting. And the real also has thing of like Americana stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then the other one actually is a book that inspired me a lot. Is an old book from the 1980s by Louis L'Amour, super famous Western author. But it was one of his. It was basically it's an urban fantasy novel, and it's called Haunted Mesa. And so Haunted Mesa was one of the inspirations for American Paladin, because it's set in the 80s, which at the time was contemporary.
Yeah.
But it's about this guy who goes looking for his friend out in the Four Corners area who has gone missing. And it's basically a story of this guy getting sucked into another dimension.
Interesting. I've not heard of this
Louis
before.
L'Amour novel, and most people don't think of Louis L'Amour as a urban fantasy author.
Yeah.
He did. And so I did steal one creation of his from that book and use it as kind of a little hat tip homage in American Paladin. He had a character referred to as a poison woman, and so I have a poison woman in American Paladin.
Okay.
So
yeah, I've not heard of that, so I'll have to look that up.
It's a classic, and it's also it's very obviously it's a book from the 80s written by a guy who started writing in the 1940s.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it falls flat on a lot of modern sensibilities, but honestly it's a brilliant book and it's really good. I actually am a huge Louis L'Amour fan. Okay, so there's my two off the wall recommendations for you.
Yeah.
Dave Butler, Early Americana, Witchy Eye, and Louis L'Amour, Haunted Mesa.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Well, I guess we've talked a lot. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to plug before we wrap things up, other than the Kickstarter, which
I do have one thing. Actually, my next release is in October, and it is Academy of Outcasts by Aethon is the publisher, and that's the one I was talking about. It's like kind of a Dungeons and Dragons fun progression fantasy series, and I've written 2 of those so far. Book 1 is October, and it's super fun. Sure. It's like I said, Saga of the Forgotten Warrior is my like deep, dark, serious fantasy. This I riffed so many lines from like playing D&D with my buddies. Like I have a regular group. We haven't met for like 6 months because we suck and we all have jobs. But I have a regular D&D group, and I stole so many lines. And in fact, actually, one of my favorite characters I've ever played. His name's Trax Bloodtrail. He's a shark monk, and he's a character in this. But yeah, that's Academy of Outcasts. That comes out in October.
Okay. Well, everybody can look forward to that as well. Like I said, I'll be sure to link the Kickstarter down below, which as of the time of this being recorded and uploaded is still live. So there still is time to get your hands on an early copy of American Paladin. Yeah, Larry, thanks for chatting with me this evening. This has been a lot of fun.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you.
Well, I definitely wish you best of success with this Kickstarter. Everyone should check it out. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.